All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Low-Code Campfire, episode number 27. We are having this meeting today. We'll talk about beta and a lot of topics that seem to be whatever topics are on your mind, and I've outlined some as well. This is a weekly gathering, and we emphasize all skill levels are welcome. It's a technical event. We try to get together and share challenges and techniques and experiences, and we're always good if you'll bring something to show or be ready to help someone else with ideas and suggestions. All the past episodes are recorded, and you can see them on our YouTube channel. We recommend you to go immediately right now to youtube.com/plantandapp, subscribe, and hit the notifications. We have a relatively informal agenda. We'll do say hi if you want to, and then we'll do first call and kind of work through all the different things that are going on. I didn't really open up I didn't update this agenda, but it's similar to this. And this is a meeting format, so jump in and be helpful. Our main guideline is to mute if you got noise and to be nice. If you have topics, questions, something that you want to address in a future episode, use the form that's a part of the invitation that you got, or use this QR code link. Gives you the opportunity to give me feedback, and we do read that every week. So with that, good morning, everyone. Hello, hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, good morning.
Hello, Jim. I'm going to call you out a little bit. Did you see the email? You're have a support opportunity coming up in half an hour?
I did.
Okay.
I didn't notice if there was a link in there yet. But,
All right. I thought there was. Maybe we could chase that down. But yeah, we unfortunately they wanted to overlap it with Campfire, so I'm not going to be able to do that, and you're going to have to bug out early, I guess. But glad that they're getting on to your issue. This is the same one we touched on last week with authentication. So now we got the experts involved.
I want to thank everybody that was here to help last week, because the ideas that came through from this group, got me through the first part of the hurdle and reinforced what I was doing. So thanks to everyone for their suggestions.
Oh, good deal. I'm trying to bring up my calendar here on the other screen and see if I can make sure that you have the link to that. If you don't, let me know and I'll hunt him down and we'll get it to happen. So good. Anyone else new to the group want to say hello? All right, no pressure. So we are on first call. What's on your mind? Anything you got going on? Anything we can help with today? This is the part where I stay constructively quiet to see if anybody has something, because I got topics, but whatever you're thinking is valuable. All right, here we go. Maybe we'll get something else. So first thing I wanted to cover is a programming note. Like we're running a live TV show here. But I don't think anybody's going to show up on the day after U.S. Thanksgiving. And, well, I'm not. It's a corporate holiday. So if you guys want to get together without me, let me know. Otherwise, that one will take off. And in terms of other cancellations, I look forward on the calendar, and Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve are both Fridays this year. So I will be sending out a cancellation on those, or an updated Zoom invitation on those. So watch for that. When it says canceled, it's just those few things. We're going to keep on going with Campfire. The next one, if Bogdan were here, we would talk about the beta system progress. He was going to try to be here today, and I think he had some thoughts. I might save that one for a little while because he may join us in a bit. So we'll come back to that one. So now we are up to contributions to Campfire. There were some contributions this last week. And, last week when we got to talking about Campfire, I was a little bit, there was a minute there where I was thinking about, there was some discussion about whether or not how the marketplace was going to look, and especially if you hung around for the conversation after the meeting, something about, we're talking some about marketplace. And for a minute I got thinking, all right, is that really the purpose of this Campfire website? And maybe we should be going towards marketplace. And then I realized, I remembered why we did that, which was live demonstrations, being able to put up software and see it and do it, whether that's things that you will eventually be part of the marketplace, or more likely just techniques and things that we discover along the way, and being able to look at it and do it. So I don't know if anybody else was confused, but I was thinking, what's the value of Campfire if we're going to have a marketplace? But it's a different thing. So anyone with an opinion on that, contrary to mine? It's allowed to have a contrary opinion.
Now that makes sense, Dale.
So with that, I'm going to zoom over to contributions and take a look. We had 3, the one that Ben did real time last week. This was, if you don't have the address, it's campfire.plantainapp.com. If you're not part of this and you are part of the Campfire group, we'll make sure you get credentials. So just put an email address that you want that invitation to go out to the chat, and I'll include you in the group. But the contributions that are there, the first one that we added last week that Ben added, was about autofocus. So if you wanted to, when you're loading a form, have one field that's not the first one, for one that your browser considers first to be the focus, you can set the attribute of one field using the custom attributes. You can set autofocus to true. So that's nicely documented by a screenshot there. And then you can add tab index values to all the different ones. And they don't have to be numerically in sequence, by the way. It's not 1, 2, 3. You can go 100, 200, 500. So, but if you give tab indexes to your various fields, then that will control the tab order. Tab will go up through those, and back tab will go back through them. So thanks for documenting that.
No problem. Actually, I have a question regarding that.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't say it, and I didn't test it. So I'm just going to ask, the attribute value, does it accept my tokens? Because then we might be able to do the autofocus dynamically.
That would be cool. I would assume it does. But your mileage.
I'll have to test it.
Somebody test that. Let us know, and then update this to let us know. It'd be nice. We should probably include that in our. If it does, I'll put in a request, or maybe I'll even do it. Sometimes I make small changes to the code, and I could put in accepts my tokens. That sounds like quite a project for me. Okay. Next one, we had a question this week. Mark had a question about module output, and I think we're going to tackle this a little bit more down the line. But the idea is that module output, if you have a module on a page, that you can use it, consume it elsewhere. So, for example, we have a module here in this HTML module. I'm outputting username, and this is, if we were to look deep into the module settings, we would get a module ID number, and over here we have a different, we're using the module output, and so we're getting the output from 447 and also 512, and I guess this was the source of Mark's question. We might as well hit it now. It's, you can grab output from a module and display it elsewhere, and that certainly works well with HTML modules. Doesn't seem to work with action forms and probably other things. And so now this was where I was going to put Bogdan on the spot and say, do we know what the limitations of module output is Or,
Yeah, so I guess it grabs the content of the module, but then if that module uses, for example, APIs, if it has like server request APIs, Ajax request, I think that's when things are going to break.
yeah, so if it's just straightforward output that's in a module, it makes it very easy to reuse them. But if it's interactive content, isn't going to load that well.
Yep.
So this is the behind the scenes where we grab that content module output 447. You have to know the module ID, but it does give you the ability to reuse content and insert it into other things like forms, not just, I mean, with an HTML module, for example, within Core DNN, you could place a copy of a reference to a module elsewhere, but this opens up yet another way to reuse content and to format it nicely.
Thanks for clearing that up. A follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Sure, we charge extra, but go ahead.
Okay. Can you suggest a way to embed a form in something else like a grid?
Of course, there's so for example, we did that. I know we did that on some projects. In grid, you have the detail view, and then inside the detail view, you can put basically an iframe to the modules. So that's something that I saw us doing, or grid in grids, or forms in grids like this. So that's something, of course, that you can do. Of course, opening in pop-up and things like that, that's always an option. Instead of displaying the form in line, you click a button and open it in line in a pop-up. And overall, I think iframes, so if you want to put it in another place, iframes would be like a easy way to do it. I don't think it's safe long-term because browsers now tend to mess with iframes. But right now, if you are on the same domain, I don't think you have problems. It's when you try to embed on different domains, that's when you get into all sorts of issues. And I remember that some were really difficult to solve, like Safari was the most difficult to get around the iframe limitations.
Great. Yeah, I think I would probably, for what I'm doing, I would choose to do the pop-up, and I think that would be just great. Thank you for the suggestion, Bogdan.
A related question is, in a grid, I noticed you can add a form. Is that different than the detail view?
Yeah, there is an old, something that's quite old, and actually something that in this release we are going to mark as obsolete. So it used to be that you could use the same action form as a field inside the action grid. But this caused a lot of problems over time because basically we are replicating one form for each row, and that leads to performance issues. So that's why we are dropping. And because with the pattern to open forms in pop-up, open forms in line, I think it's a better pattern. But at some point, I think we'll re-add that feature, but maybe inside the inline edit to have more capabilities to do more complex forms.
Yep. So heading towards obsolete, absolutely. And from what I understood too, that was a separate copy of it was a separate code base, right? Mm-hmm. So it's double work to maintain and keep all the same features one to the other. And the last contribution, we had a question, and Phil is on the meeting today. It was a question from Phil, but asking questions about how can we do imports and imports to entities. And I did what I consider a very basic or brute force kind of import where you can do an update where you can import data into an entity and also update that same entity. I've reached out to the implementation team to find out some more patterns about how about other ways that you might do this, but at least there is a working example of how to do an import. And so I'll just run through it quickly. I've got some data this is an actual Plant an App entity. This was an entity page that was created by Plant an App. I've added an import form over here to the right so we can see that it works. But the first step, we can create an export. So this also covers how do you get an export out of a table. And so this is a Excel. Let's see, loading up here. And Excel is loading protected, so I'm going to enable editing it. But this just dumped out all of our data into an Excel table. And so if we wanted to add records, this is so just adding a record to this Excel sheet, this one is going to get imported. And this particular one that I've developed relies on an old ID, the old, whatever you would consider the common, the identifier that's going to carry forward to identify records in the spreadsheet versus, or old system versus records in the entity. I'm using old ID to do that. So you'll see a lot of code relative to old ID if you get into this. And then if we make changes to a record like this, so this thing that we're going to do, it will process both changes and new records. So I am going to save that spreadsheet and hide it out of the way. And so now if I were to choose it and import it or select it and process it, this will process. It also creates an output, which we'll go ahead and open up as well. But it's the result file from the shows what it did. But when we refresh the screen here, we can see that it's changed my city and it's added Tom as a new record. It's left. These records didn't change, so they stay the same. And if I were to bring up that result spreadsheet, I'll just show you what that looks like. This added a result column to show that the record was updated or new record. And it also grabs the ID. So the new Tom Jones record, we know that it has been assigned the record ID 4. So it gives you the ability to verify what happened in the update and or import processing and the IDs that are relative if you needed to pass that back to a different system. So you can take a look at behind the scenes. If we look at this import form, the kinds of things that happen in there, everything happens under the process button. I mean, there's only 2 controls. You grab the Excel file as a single file upload, but we create a list, an Excel from the, create a list from the Excel. So this gives us the new contacts list that we can iterate through. I've added a column to this that is the result. And so this puts no change, a column called result, and the no change on every one. So that's where the result column comes from initially, so that we can see what it does. And then we execute actions for each list. This is, by the way, version 1.17. These are the renamed process actions. But we go through new contacts and do a lookup in the database using that old ID, and then either we do an add record or an update record. And so like a new record creates the new record, create new contact using the raw action, and we pass all the new contact values in one by one and come out with a new ID. And we're using extend list properties to say that the result is a new record and an ID is a new ID on. So that's update new on update. We use the partially update contact to do the same kinds of things, update name, city, and rating, and then extend list. Sorry about my mouse. It's going the wrong way when I run the wheel. I've got Amazon's going to bring me one later today. So next week we won't see that so much. Anyway, so then we get the result and say record updated and the ID that was created for it. Excuse me, this one is the existing ID. And probably the one thing that's that's hidden in there, and I'll just mention it, is we're taking the value of the new contact, so the import value, new contact name coming from the spreadsheet, but I'm using the equal sign construct, which is a little hard to see here, so I'll copy it out to so we can see it. Paste it out here. So this is the construct that I'm using, and so we're getting a default value from the existing contact name. So if the spreadsheet happens to have a blank value for a given column, it's just going to use the existing one. So essentially, that means the spreadsheet can have minimal data, just the old ID and nothing else, and the other properties will not be disturbed. You can just update the properties that you want to. So quite a lot going on in this import, and I hope it will serve as a good example to people who want to do it. That could be, again, I've asked for some input from our implementation team, how other ways that they're doing it. And I will say too that there's some things that aren't being demonstrated here. For example, this doesn't have any related entities in it. So if we had a status table of the contact, for example, that those would have, in the import, it might have values like active or inactive. In an entity structure, it might, with that relationship, it might have values like 1 means active, 2 means inactive. So you'd have to build in a way to look up the values or assign the values as they come in. So these would only get more complex as you're dealing with those. And then if you had a list of entities, you'd also have to maintain the middle table. So it does start to get more complex. There is no just, hey, import my entity kind of logic.
But just to be clear, Dale, this is Phil, by the way. I could use this even for related entities that would ultimately be like, well, I don't know what your terminology is, but like children of like a high level entity.
Right. So if you if we look into entities, let me jump in here. I guess I could have looked up my entity to start with. So this is the entity that we were just importing against. And so we have a simple, it was name, city, and rating, and they're all very, the primary types. If we added I have a good example present, but if it's if each contact was related by if it was a list. Let me see if I'm just going to poke at see what I've got here. So on my entities, if you had chosen an entity, let's say that contacts could have one image, let's say, I don't know. The thing that would be in here would be a single ID. So you'd have to look up and know the ID of the related image and put it there. If you have if you use the list of entities thing, so where you could have one to many or many to many, depending on how you've implemented it, there's this join table in the middle. And I would advise you to take a look at the cafe that we just did on Wednesday. That I talked some about what that relationship looked like, but then you would be responsible to do an insert into that table if you're importing a new record, to provide the IDs. So you're saying that this contact is linked to these many activities, for example. So you'd have one contact have many activities. You'd have to create the join record.
Okay, I think I would need to probably play around with that to see how it actually works. But that's the issue I have right now, is I've got a spreadsheet that's got like a base table, and then it's got all the tabs that are all related products. This is coming from an old legacy system that is a third party that we're trying to potentially get rid of. Yep. I mean, I'm talking, 100,000 rows in each of these tabs kind of thing, or 50,000 rows. And I'm just trying to figure out if I can actually get this into this, or if I should just keep going the way I've been going with regular tables.
So, if I were approaching something like that, I would look at the most subordinate tables and import those first. So your status tables and things like that. And then this demonstrated that you can get IDs off of, so you can do the import, get the IDs back. And so then, and just work your way up. It's not a, each import, each sheet that you're going to do is going to require, its own level of importing. So, I wouldn't say it's easy. It's just, it's doable. And this kind of demonstrates the techniques, but I'd start with the lowest level one and like status tabs and things like that, so that when you're ready to import them in the primary entity or a higher level entity, that those are available to you. And then you can build in logic along the way that says, hey, I have a status value of inactive, so you look that up and you grab out of the supporting table, and then dynamically assign the right status. It's, like I say, it's not easy. It's just doable. It's very detailed. Got 100,000 records and lots of sheets. It would be detailed. But if you start, I'm going to back up one step farther. I would say if you design the entity structure first that would support the data that you have, then you've got a target to putting things into. Right. So design the new system, and then you'll find a way. You can use techniques like this to put the data into it. And those things can be built as the process to do that can be built to be repeatable. So you could do it in a development environment and working with a subset of your records, and then clear it all out and do a final import or a re-import. And I assume you'd be testing to make sure it's all good, and then do a final one on a defined date, that kind of thing.
Is there any performance limitations with like entities, because you're kind of abstracting out all the SQL out of all the joins and everything? But is there any issues you guys have seen with, like, are there any constraints in terms of the size of any of these?
So I haven't done a lot of work at the upper ends of this. The spreadsheet mechanism that I'm doing, for example, all the data is coming in and handled in memory. You're loading the spreadsheet into an entity in memory. So I would assume that at some level you could run into issues with that, whether you need to. I assume you'd see a lot of slowdown before you'd see, flat choking it out. And there's no question that the technique that I'm showing here is a one-by-one kind of a solution. There are other things which I think you've used before, where you would load data directly into SQL tables. So that may be an alternative for you too, to load them there and then do the manipulation into entities from there. So yeah, bulk load and then process separately.
Sorry, I guess I wasn't clear. I'm not as concerned about the performance on the one-time load. It's more the ongoing. Is there any issues that you guys have seen with entities in terms of, maxing out? Because it looks like under the covers, you're building everything as, abstracted, single table type things, for the flexibility to not have to stick your fingers in the database and do all the database stuff. But have you guys seen any performance issues if you're talking about like 100,000 rows, that type of thing?
I can step in if you want, Dale.
Please do. I'm going to say it's perfect and it has no trouble. 100,000, I wouldn't expect problems, but go ahead. Let's see.
Yeah. So basically, the listing where you see all the records, that's already wrapped in a common table expression. So if it's 10,000 or 1 million records, that will not have any problems. I think the read actions, I'm not sure if we have pagination built already into them, because I think this was an issue with some project, and I think we added the pagination into the read all kind of actions. But of course, I mean, even our team sooner or later, especially when you start to build custom stuff, you'll write your own queries, when it gets very custom. But for the CRUD, we haven't had issues.
Okay, thanks, Bogdan.
Great. So that is one way to do data import, and there's lots of ways. And as we get more information from the implementation team, then I'll circle back on that. But that's Campfire contributions this week. So there was this question from Mark about module output, which we've already covered. And I'm going to back up now. Bogdan, I think you wanted to, this one, beta, progress, anything that you have to bring on that one?
Yes, let me share my screen for a bit. Oh, can you enable my screen sharing?
Sure.
Cool. So I think people here in the beta program, you've already received emails from me, and you already have access. And I actually saw a couple of contributions already coming in from Peter, from Jim. So much appreciated. So I'm not sure if everyone already saw this section, how Ben designed it, how it was structured, but basically. At the top is everything in the changelog that we marked as testable, and our QA team went through this entire changelog and added testing instructions like what to watch out for, what to cover, what's maybe some ramification of the issues. So it's all there, and then at the bottom there's also a section to freely input items whenever they are not in the list, so other items. And so far, just to highlight, I think there were a couple of issues on the here on the automation with the import, and just wanted to go through it a bit just to tell you how we are looking at it. Oh, this is just waiting. Let me do a refresh. Yeah, something is happening here. Oh, it opened, but I refreshed the page. No worries. Me being impatient with recycles. Okay, so let's look again. So there are two, one from Peter, one from Jim, and I guess I think one refers to the same thing with the import. So there is a problem on import if it has the same. I mean, it will have the same name, so it will not create a new job when you import it. There's a simple workaround to change it directly to the JSON. So, for example, for this one, we decided that we are not going to stop the release, but we are going to release a hotfix immediately after. So. Because I mean, we don't want to change the code, because if you change the code, that could have other ramifications. So this is the way we look at everything that gets submitted. Either we stop the release because it's something critical that will prevent people from using the product, or we decide that we'll get it as a hotfix immediately after the release, or just put it in the backlog for the long run if it's something that maybe affects only a few users, or only some particular use cases or things like that. So yes, much appreciated everyone that submitted already the tickets, and everyone else, let's rock and roll. And of course, if there's people here that are not yet in the beta program and want to join, reach out to me or to Ben or to Dale, and we'll get you inside.
Yeah, so there are, we've already had one more request, so we'll send that your way.
Sounds good. Any questions regarding this beta portal?
Guess no news is good news.
Exactly.
Sounds good.
So good, thank you for that. I'm going to just show a quick display. We talked a couple of weeks ago in Cafe about our build internal system, and this is where we keep up with what our systems are and what versions they're listed at as we upgrade it automatically post version numbers. So you can see that at least for all the ones, for a good portion of them, we've moved all of ours to 1.17. We have a couple that haven't been upgraded yet. I haven't figured out that yet. And then we have a few that are listed that are not reporting yet. So those are, some of those perhaps won't even be part of this 1.17 upgrade, but just for the ones that we know are on Plant and App, the app builder, most of our systems have been upgraded and we're not seeing problems. So I think from my perspective, we're on track for a on-time release. If you're hearing anything, if you had, did you mention Bogdan, or are we looking?
Yeah, so I think we'll keep the release on the 17th unless more issues pop up from the beta testing program, and then maybe we postpone it for Friday or for the next week. But otherwise, I think the next Wednesday, if it's nothing major, we'll push the release.
Very good. And just to mention, the beat goes on, the cycle continues, and this morning I saw, we do on Friday mornings a sprint demo, what's been going on internally, what changes are made, and so the focus has already shifted to 1.18 and new features, and so I think there's some good features that are coming that way. I don't know if Bogdan's ready to talk about them, but I'm just impressed that seeing good things coming, and seeing good things coming, period.
Yes, I'm not prepared yet to show them, but I think next week or the following week for sure.
Good. And it was also fun for us. For me, there was, you all have seen, I think, Radu before in the Low-Code Cafe. He demonstrated a project that he's working on. So we kind of hit both ends of the spectrum, what development we're doing, plus how our products are being used. And so Radu was on that end of the spectrum and showed a very cool application. And it's kind of mind-blowing what can, I spent a lot of time kind of in the, how do I do the first step kinds of things. And Radu's, I'm playing checkers and he's playing chess. He really put together a very interesting solution to an actual client need. And so getting back to our new mission statement, which I only have the first half, but building sophisticated software, and no question, we're building sophisticated software. So good. All right. Did that. For those who are following along on Campfire, we are next week we're in a series right now. We're replacing a legacy application, and next week we're going to go on to developing a front end. Plant and App, as it is, does a good job of building management kinds of screens, and in some applications that would be the final. Right, you've built a great entity model. It builds the various things that you need to be able to create, read, update, delete those entries. It's really quite sophisticated, has a lot of features built in, the APIs are developed. There's just a lot that it does. But if you want to develop something that has your own custom look and feel, you wanted to have more control over how people interact with your data, then now we're talking about building a front end. And so that's where Low-Code Cafe is going to go. And I just thought I would ask this group, just as a brainstorming session, what kinds of places have you run into challenges with doing front end, and particularly where where you're using our entities, but what are the challenges that I guess it would be common patterns, and then maybe if you have some kind of edge case that, hey, I had a hard time doing this. Anyone with any feedback on that level? I know I sprung it on you, so nobody wants to talk, but.
Dale, this is Mark. I could mention a couple of things. Yeah, for one, I would say when you want to put multiple forms on the same page and have them communicate with each other, there's several different ways to handle getting information back and forth. That has been something that needed to be figured out in order to make that work right. So you might want to touch on that. And if you wanted some more specific details, I could probably give that to you at a later time. Another one, a suggestion, hiding and revealing an entire form. Sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes you want to pop it up. Other times you want it to be on the page, but out of sight. That's something you might touch on if you care to.
Yep. I think some of what Bogdan mentioned earlier about being able to embed forms and forms inside of grids and grids inside of grids, that would be a fun pattern. I know specifically the request was we got some feedback that asked about some of this stuff, and part of that was import, which we've touched on at least some of that today, but simple import. I know menus come up as a topic. We've covered some of that in some low-code cafes, but what menus do the clients do various users or your end users get?
Another thing might be the inclusion or exclusion of your entity IDs up in the URL. If you are trying to keep the URL clean or to not reveal IDs.
Yep.
Other ways to do that.
Yep. And when you say that, what kinds of solutions have you? I have some in mind that I consider, but I'm just wondering which way are you thinking? Cookies or session or? Yeah,
cookies or session variables. You could pass things from form to form directly, or JavaScript, jQuery, to get a value from here to there if it's on the page. And just another idea I just had last week was I know the grids are watching the URL typically to get information from there, but they could be watching the URL for just a code that says refresh now, and then it could get maybe its values from a cookie once it's prompted to refresh, and in that way the data is not in the URL, keeps the URL clean. I know it's a marginal improvement, but I like that marginal improvement.
Yep. Yes. Our IDs are integer numbers, and so if they're on the URL, it does open up the possibility that someone can switch, just do URL manipulation and see other records, whether or not they're, I mean, then there's permissions come into play, but just to remove the temptation to be able to do that and yet provide some clean links. Sometimes I do assign GUIDs to the or new compact GUIDs to the entity, so that I can refer to it by that instead of by the ID, and that does some obfuscation and keeps people from guessing.
You might mention that there's sometimes a conflict with the Bootstrap version and a theme. If you're doing a outward-facing solution, then you're going to have a theme probably installed.
Yeah, see, that's not really a problem. I'm going to use Exelon. No,
I use that for all my client sites. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But you know, rather than highlighting it as a problem or a potential problem, which it is, highlight that we are in fact working on that now.
Yeah, I think that's sufficient.
Yeah. Good. So you know, again, I'm going to point back to the feedback thing. If you have anything that comes to mind on that topic and want to suggest it, then this feedback link or the same feedback that you see in the email. Again, we read that stuff every week. Every time there's a submission, we take a look at that. And so I'd appreciate that. I don't know how many things I can get to, but the idea in that setting was that we're trying to touch all the different areas within Plant an App and show how, in a reasonable amount of time, really an incredibly short amount of time, you can develop a full app. And you know, I think I don't know, for those of you that are following along, I'd love your feedback on whether we're doing that. But it's I don't know, a back to basics kind of a series. So.
Hey Dale, I got one. I don't know if this has come up before, but do you? I think I've been told I kind of got to roll my own solution, but I've got applications where people are uploading images for like damage and receipts and various things, and they're always very big file sizes. To do an automatic, reduction of those file sizes to not take up just gigs and gigs of space as part of like the file upload.
Yeah, I know that that at least one of the tools that we have has some ability to do that, but I don't know if the single file upload, I don't recall that.
I think it's an add-on that we never released, something that we use internally. We call it something like the drawing add-on. But I also seen our team and customers do this with external services via APIs. You know, there are many services out there that do this resizing, changing formats. So
yeah, I try to stay away from that just because sometimes we have it considered sensitive information, and you know, they don't like it when typically we're sending stuff all to different places to utilize services.
Yeah. And I actually remember that I also was involved in something like this a couple of years ago. And what we did, you know, we have the PowerShell actions in the Plant an App. So what we did, we found one of these command line tools that does this, you know, and running the PowerShell on the image did the resize. So we also did this kind of, let's say, solution.
Yeah, Phil, just so you know, I had to do something similar with images with many of the sites that I worked with, and same like what you had said, I ended up creating my own solution for it. It's just a my token. You still have to upload the file in its full size to your server, but once it's there, you can supply the my token its file ID, which you would get back from that file upload. And then what that would basically do is open up the file and continually compress it in increments that you want until it reaches a file size equal to or less than what you designate. So it makes it dynamic. So that way, you could turn around and say, all right, well, I want to shrink the file in 10% increments until it's less than 2 megs in size. And then, you can use different parameters to tweak that for other areas in your site as well.
Were you triggering that then through an after process like Bogdan's talking about, like a PowerShell type thing? Because yeah, there's 100
No.
ways to do this. But
No, I don't use PowerShell at all. I don't know anything about PowerShell, but I do it in one of two different ways. Either I do immediate, like I said, when you upload a file, you get that file ID number back. So you can use that and just immediately process it. The other method that I've done is every time I upload a file, I dump the file ID number into a table for processing, images ready for processing. And then I have a scheduler that goes and processes, let's say for argument's sake, every 5 minutes. Anything that hasn't been processed, it takes that and then one by one just compresses all of those images until it's done. And 5 minutes later, it does it again.
Okay, cool.
And I also posted the link to the tool that I was using in the chat if you want the PowerShell solution. So you have a couple of solutions now to choose from.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
So I'm going to mention one more that is that's included, although whether or not this works in your scenario, but the file manager tool that we have in Plantanet lets you pick a file and or multiple files and submit them. And if you get into, like, this is a 2.2 megabyte picture of my grandson, and when you upload it, you have access to the file, and you can resize. So in the properties of the file manager, there is, it's going to letting me upload multiple files. Where are they going to go? And then what does it do with them? So you can specify in pixels the maximum width and height, and it will resize it to that size. So if you have a target, it will resize it for you. And then you have access to each file, the name, URL, everything. So when they click the button, you have the ability then to associate it where you need to. So that general file manager tool, if you haven't used it, that is a possibility for your application. And let's see if I can look at the site assets real quickly for this one. So I just uploaded that file, and it's here in the folder, and 2 megabytes down to 87K, and upside down. Welcome to iPhone. I can't put my iPhone in the right direction. So that's a possibility.
So I used that drawing add-in that Bogdan referenced earlier. I liked it very much, even though some of the interface was a little bit glitchy. It was pretty valuable for what I wanted to do, which was upload an image and then grab a subsection of the image that I wanted to keep and discard the rest. So in other words, I'm cropping the image live on the screen. So the user would do that while uploading. I found that to be pretty valuable as a combination of what you're doing.
Yeah, I remember we worked on that. We had some let's see, that was I suspect I have that someplace, but let's see.
Yeah, we worked out the glitchiness that I just referred to with some settings.
Cool. Okay. Image editor. There it is. So here again, you can, with the image editor, what I'm trying to remember, I think that you specify what size total of image you want to accept in that. No, that's,
Yeah, there's also another mode, Dale, that it's just not turned on at the moment. I think you could resize the crop square live by dragging handles. So it's like one way or the other, and you get to choose.
so this is an image editor tool within.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's part of Action Form. That's not an add-on.
Right.
I don't think that's what Bogdan was referring to when he said the drawing add-on. I think there was something else that they did. Because I know this was actually my request that got this created. But yeah, this is part of Action Form itself.
Okay.
Yeah, I just put it into the resize mode. Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
all right. So cool. 4 minutes. What else?
Hey, in one of the communications that I think Bogdan, when was or one of you guys, when you were announcing this meeting, you said bring your product improvement ideas along.
We do say that.
Can I voice one? I think I can be brief. I think I heard someone starting to talk, so I can be really brief. You know, I was watching you, Dale, on Wednesday. You were creating an entity live, and we were all watching. And it just struck me that, you know, you have to, when you're creating an entity, you type in the entity name, and then you need to copy the entity name and tab over and paste the entity name in, and then make it plural, usually an S you add on the end, but sometimes it's a little bit more complicated. But it just occurred to me, why don't you just fix it so that whatever you're typing the entity name, it just pops that over to the plural section for you, so you don't have to do that every time. Of course, you'll need to add an S or something along those lines, but I think you could do something with that. That is my first product recommendation.
Thank you for that. And I'm expecting Ben to do this before we get off the call, because Ben's contribution to Campfire manipulated the screen. I suspect a little JavaScript on the page would actually do that for us, but that would be a hack. I know that.
Yeah, that would be hacky. I don't know if I would be able to do that as a hack, but I actually do have JavaScript code that does that directly on the on change of a field, where, you know, it would copy it over to another field, and then it also does a dirty check. So for argument's sake, let's just say for this particular instance, you type in the singular, it creates the plural, but then you change the plural and then go back and change the singular, it's no longer going to touch the plural, because the plural is now different than what it was auto-generating. So it's not going to overwrite it any longer, type of thing.
How did I know you had this in your back pocket?
Yeah, that's cool.
But so I'm going to stand in front of Bogdan here just a little bit. First of all, we appreciate and we do ask for the product improvement requests. So very valid. And I think what you say, it makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of things we have to figure out where to spend our effort to provide the biggest bang. So the fact that we require plural and don't help you fill it out probably isn't going to make it into next week's release, but we will put it on the list.
Put it on.
Is that fair, Bogdan?
Yes, yes. And in fact, I mean, one of the next steps that we discussed for the community portal is to have the feature request section. So then it will be much easier to prioritize, because we get multiple votes, maybe multiple perspectives on the same thing. So That will be
Yes.
a big step.
Give me
forward.
time. Give me time.
So often when there's a workaround, you have to fight the fires that are burning, not the nice to haves, and that's where we have to figure out where to put our efforts. So cool. All right. Thank you all for spending your hour with us. We'll do it again one more time, and then we'll skip a week.
Dale, before you hang up, personally,
Yes, sir.
I have an update for you after the recording's done.
Okay, good deal. I will hang on for that. All right. Let's see. Actually, I will just say thank you all. I'm going to get to my end screen so Mihai has something nice to look at when we finish out when we do our recording. Okay. Y'all have a great week.
All right. You too, Dale. Thank you.
You guys later.